before. And it's O.P. Rockwell's first confirmed kill of his whole life.
Whoa.
And he said he never killed anybody that didn't deserve to die.
Dude. Okay, wait, so let me get this straight.
I'll tell you more
Joseph
about
Smith
him.
was the first presidential candidate ever assassinated?
Yeah. Yeah. The mob had cannons.
The mob had cannons? All right, welcome back to Midnight Mormons. Ladies and gentlemen, I am your host, Cardin Ellis, and today we have a special guest in the studio, none other than Brian Stutzman.
Good to be with you.
Yeah, he's a historian. He's a researcher. Similar to us, we are not apologists. And he says, oh, I'm not a historian and a researcher, but I beg to differ because he literally wrote the book on Warsaw, Illinois, which is the city that the mob came from that killed Joseph Smith. And it's the original gangster hideout. It's the Vasquez Rocks of Tiburcio Vasquez. It's the OK Corral of the OK Corral gang. I'm botching my cowboy history here. But Brian literally wrote the book and knows everything about it. And he's graced us today with his presence to talk about, I don't know, all kinds of cool stuff, man. What's your favorite topic in Mormon history, bro?
Warsaw, the martyrdom. And
the martyrdom.
Yeah, the martyrdom. And when this movie came out, Who Killed Joseph Smith, 2 minutes in, I had like my notepad out. Yeah. 7 pages of errors, in my opinion.
Oh, geez.
As I watched the movie. But, you know, Warsaw's this really cool little town. It's about 18 miles south of Nauvoo. And so much had been written about Nauvoo and even Carthage, hundreds, if not thousands of books. I went to Warsaw kind of on a fluke with one of my sons. There was no history. I wrote the only history. I couldn't believe some professional academic type guy hadn't come and done Warsaw. So I found it very fascinating.
Okay, so
about 10 years worth of research.
So I'm not, it's super impressive. I'm not a historian, but I've read a lot of historical books. Okay.
Right. Okay.
And I have heard Warsaw mentioned in a lot of these.
Oh, it's central
publications. Yeah, exactly.
It's almost as important as Carthage. In fact, it was more important except for the martyrdom. Significantly more important than Carthage, except for the martyrdom.
So why is Warsaw? It's the city that the mob basically got.
There was 5 people who eventually stood trial. 4 of them were from Warsaw, but it was a hotbed of. It was a nemesis of Nauvoo.
Okay. Ooh, a nemesis.
Yeah.
Ooh, that's kind of cool. So it was like the Minneapolis to Minnesota. You know, it's 18 miles away. You said, right?
18 miles away.
Okay. Cool.
It kind of forms this triangle. You got Nauvoo on the river, Carthage inland, and Warsaw on the river, and it's an 18-mile triangle. All sides.
So, truth be told, I literally just met Brian like 24 to 36 hours ago over the phone. And now he's in our studio in Los Angeles recording with me because he's all fired up about the Who Killed Joseph Smith movie. And we're going to get to that. Yeah. We're going to get to that in a live stream pretty soon here. But in our conversation on the phone, I'd asked you about some church historical things, and in all of your studies of Warsaw, Poland, you came across some really amazing stories.
And also Warsaw, Illinois, too.
Oh, sorry, Warsaw, Illinois. I'm sorry. I have family from Warsaw, Poland, and so I'm gonna be botching that a bunch in this show. So anyway, when I was a kid, I remember my dad had a book called The Fate of the Persecutors of the Prophet Joseph Smith. Are you familiar with it, right? Ledlow. Yeah. Okay, it's got a super cool like 60s or 70-ish cover. You know what I'm saying? But I remember reading part of it.
1956, something. Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So it's super retro. Yeah. But anyway, I remember reading it. And how much of that is true? How much, like, we'd all like to think that there was some kind of awesome, like, you know, when the child abuser gets beat up in prison because there's criminal justice. You know what I'm saying? Was a lot of that just fanciful thinking? Was like, what?
Well, Ludlow's book is got a bad rap because it ends very fanciful. But the first 90%, phenomenal history.
Really?
But people throw it out and say, oh, you know, at the end, they're talking about this guy found in this cave and maggots are coming out of his eyes. And he says, oh, I shouldn't have shot Joseph Smith or whatever.
It wasn't like a flesh-eating worm that went from like one ear to another or something like that. Okay.
Some of these accounts at the very end are probably not true, although there are some verifiable accounts. But the book itself, some really good, well-documented history up until the end. And
Really?
don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. Okay.
Now, well, what was true? What was true in the book?
Well, the judge over okay. So after the martyrdom, the next year there was a judge, a trial, and a judge, Judge Young. Okay. He eventually ended up in an insane asylum in Washington, D.C. Okay, because you got to understand that it was a kangaroo court.
That either makes him like legitimately crazy, or else a really cool political refugee. One of the two. You know,
well, it's probably the same. So under his he presided over the trial that ended that basically the 5 were acquitted. Okay. And so out of the 5 that were charged, now we don't know exactly who was in the mob. They made up a list. Sheriff McIntosh had a list of 120, 129.
So there actually is a list. I thought they're all like blackface painted.
They were, but they were people most likely in the mob, but not exactly 100% clarified. We know the 3 Caldwell brothers. 2 of them went back to Warsaw. 1 went on to Carthage. We'll tell that story. The Chichinans. We can know they bragged about it. They were happy. I got obituaries of people that said we were in the mob. We helped kill out the quotes.
Was this in all of your research for the Warsaw, Illinois book?
Yeah, and they were proud. They got rid of their nemesis for the county. There's some hearsay, so we kind of know who was there. But out of the 5 that stood trial, Thomas Sharp ended up life. He kind of prospered for a while, and he ended up in a wheelchair at the very end. And he's buried a mile north of Carthage Jail. I'm surprised people don't go. Every time I go to Carthage Jail, I go to Thomas Sharp's grave and pay honorable respects for what he did to my prophet. I'll just leave it at there.
Whoa! Savage.
So
it's like that movie. I spit on your grave.
I did not spit on his grave, though. Okay. But because, well, there's so much history intertwined. We're going to talk about Frank Worrell, who O.P. Rockwell shot. His widow married Thomas Sharp. So it's
really.
Now, Frank Worrell was a guard at Carthage Jail.
Okay.
Carthage Grace, the day of the martyrdom.
Okay.
And he was later shot. And let me tell you that story real quick.
Okay.
But let's talk about the other people. William Grover.
Okay.
He's buried in the Warsaw Cemetery. We were there 6 months ago. I went and took my picture by his grave. Didn't desecrate it.
Okay.
Promise you that.
Good job.
And Jacob Davis was a school teacher.
I love that the bar is so low that we just have to. Congratulations on not desecrating the grave of the dead. Like, good job, buddy.
Then Levi Williams, he was a part-time minister, and he stood trial. In fact, he was a colonel of. There's this little town called Green Plains, about 4 miles from Warsaw. It's a field right now. And that's how you know if you're really talking to somebody who knows the martyrdom. Say, yeah, how many people have you been to Green Plains? Oh, yeah. Bull. It doesn't exist. Okay. That's kind of an acid test to see if they really know what they're talking about. So he was a part-time minister, and he stood trial for the murder of Joseph Smith. Of course, the charges weren't murder, and we'll talk about that a little later on.
Wait, it wasn't murder?
No. The movie Who Killed Joseph Smith has it all wrong. They say.
Wait a second. The martyrdom. I know there was a trial and supposedly nobody was ever convicted.
Right. That's fascinating.
Which, well, I mean, it makes sense if they all painted their faces black. I mean, it's
no. So the Hosea Lamborn was a prosecuting attorney, and he knew that he couldn't get a first-degree murder charge, so he filed the charges. The charge was conspiracy to commit murder. And he said at the trial, he says, I don't have to prove that any person was at the jail. I just have to prove who was the soul. He used the word, the soul of the movement. Who were the ringleaders that got this crowd here? Because he knew he'd have a better chance of getting a conviction because nobody saw anything. None of the mob was going to testify against each other. Of course, they knew who was there.
Yeah.
So let's get back to what happened to Frank Worrell.
Okay, yeah, Frank Worrell.
A year after, he's a guard there. And he sends a note. The mob's meeting. I mean, you cannot look at the martyrdom in a 3-minute segment inside the jail like the movie does.
Okay.
It's months in the making. What happened that morning? What happened that afternoon?
Don't worry about the movie. We'll get to the movie later. Just tell me about Frank Worrell.
Yeah. So the mobs met at a little spot called Golden's Point. And it's kind of, again, this triangle. It's right square in the middle.
Okay, cool. A triangle between Warsaw, Illinois, Carthage, and Nauvoo. Okay.
Governor Ford's over in Nauvoo. The mob meets at Golden's Point. the governor hears about it, sends a dispatch and says, go back home to Warsaw. Same time, Frank Worrell's at the jail. Joseph Smith's upstairs, Hiram Smith's upstairs.
And Frank Worrell was the guard at the time.
He's a guard.
Okay.
And he sends a dispatch, a note over to the mob. And he says, now's the time to do the deed. They read it. Thomas Sharp, Levi Williams talks to the crowd. Part of them does go back to Warsaw. The other one says, let's march on to Carthage. Okay. They get to Carthage. They murder Joseph Smith. And we'll talk about that.
Okay.
A year and a half later, well, Governor Ford afterwards just said, you know what? We're going to have a trial. We're going to get to the bottom of this.
It took him a year?
Yeah. Court week was a year.
Wow.
So what's happened is the old sheriff is actually killed. They got a new sheriff, Sheriff Backentos. And at this time, for a little while, the tensions in Hancock County after the martyrdom were kind of low. The saints were sad. They vowed not to do any revengeful things against the locals that killed Joseph.
Really? Because I had read somewhere, and by the way, your history is going to be so much more solid than mine. I'm just hopefully you'll help me work through this. I was under the understanding that there was actually a lot of fear in the surrounding areas after the martyrdom that the Mormons were going to go ape shiz.
Yeah, that first
because they were the most heavily armed group, like besides the U.S. Army.
At one time, they given their arms back to Governor Ford, but there was definitely terrified people. Carthage cleared out that night. Warsaw, for the most part, cleared out.
So prior to the martyrdom. Oh wait, no, you're right, because that's one of the reasons why they're so vulnerable to the martyrdom was because Joseph Smith had given up the guns, which is why it's so stupid when I hear Patrick Mason in the latest Salt Lake Tribune interview saying we need to use the anti-Nephi Lehites as our example and surrender our arms. I was like, what? Dog, I'm reading your book. Like, I think I like your stuff until I hear stupid stuff like that. So every time we've disarmed, we've been murdered. You know. So anyway, keep going.
So let's wrap this up. It's September 15th, 1845.
Okay.
Tensions were sky high again, probably even higher than before Joseph was martyred. The anti-Mormons, called the Antis, would go around and burn Mormon farms and houses, and they were called burners.
Really?
In the newspaper, the burners, and then where they camped. The camp of the burners were 3 miles south of Warsaw today, and tomorrow they're 4 miles over by Green Plains, and so they're
how are they just not shot?
By who?
I mean, this was the Wild West, dude.
It was very much. So,
like, if I knew, if it was 1830 and I had a motherfucking musket and I knew these people would burn my family alive inside of my house. I mean, that's a clear and present danger and assault with a deadly weapon, like from a legal, a moral, a whatever standpoint. That's freaking like, I'll send my wife and kids to my neighbor's house and be waiting inside with a freaking double-barreled shotgun.
There was claims back and forth of violence. Well,
jeez,
so some people were having their houses burned, bringing them in and said, okay, all the surrounding settlements, come in. The burners are just causing too much havoc. Okay. So you have a group of people coming in to Nauvoo, probably this would be 13 miles south of Nauvoo, and O.P. Rockwell's escorting this group of Mormon settlers.
And O.P. Rockwell is Orrin Porter Rockwell?
Orrin Porter Rockwell.
Is that like the cool, like, in-crowd way of saying it? Like O.P. Rockwell? You know?
Okay. So, the same time, the sheriff leaves Carthage, and he spends the night in Warsaw, okay? And the next morning, the mob in Warsaw hears that the sheriff's there, and he's Mormon-friendly. So they chase him. Out at the lead is Frank Worrell. And they're about 3 or 4 miles north of Warsaw. And the sheriff is in this little horse and buggy, and he's going 100 miles an hour. And this mob's chasing him a couple 100 yards back. And out of the clear blue sky, Sheriff Backentos goes over the edge at this ridge here and sees the Mormon group and sees O.P. Rockwell. And he yells out and he deputizes the whole group. He says, I'm being chased by a mob. I deputize you. Please protect me. I'm by myself. O.P. Rockwell, return riding, a couple of guys pick up their guns. And there's 2 lead guys. O.P. Rockwell shoots. His guy falls over. Return riding, Redding, I think is his name. He shoots. He misses.
Okay.
The body hits the ground. A wagon comes, they load him up and take him back, and the mob disperses. It's Frank Worrell from the Guards the year before. And it's O.P. Rockwell's first confirmed kill of his whole life.
Whoa.
And he said he never killed anybody that didn't deserve to die.
Dude. Okay, wait. So let me get this straight. Okay.
But that just escalated
So
the tensions
the guard
at the
that
jail.
gave
The note.
the note that now is the time to kill Joseph
do the
Smith
deed, yeah.
ended up being Orrin Porter Rockwell's, quote, first confirmed kill.
Isn't that cool?
That is crazy. But by the way, I think it's hilarious how we're already talking about first confirmed kill as though he's like a flying ace in World War II. Like he's a freaking Red Baron over Germany or something like that. You know what I'm saying?
You know, it went over well for the church, the Mormons that were there. But the next day, the newspaper wrote, Thomas Sharp, again, another guy who stood trial, said, you know, Frank Worrell is one of our best men. And this is just another call to arms to escalate the war on the Mormons. They're killing our people. Forget that he was chasing the sheriff.
Yeah.
You know? And so the tensions just exploded.
Yeah. And then,
they hated Brigham Young. We'll get to that. Brigham Young could be part of the.
Well, no, keep going. Actually, yeah, just keep going
so,
on that.
You know, one of the theories out there is, well, if, you know, who was behind the murder of Joseph Smith? Was it Brigham Young? Well, we'll show who killed. It wasn't John Taylor. It's impossible. I'll show you why. It was a mob. The mob hated Brigham Young as much as they hated Joseph Smith. And if Brigham Young would have paid him or hired them or coordinated the murder of Joseph Smith,
they would use it against him.
They would have said it. It would have been all over the Warsaw Signal newspaper. When the 5 went to trial, they could have died. They could have been hung or be put away. Don't you think for a second they would say, you know what? It's over. We need John Taylor and Willard Richards and Brigham Young at this trial, not us. Because it wasn't us. It was them. They told us to.
Yeah,
they didn't say a single thing. They didn't implicate.
Okay.
That's how we know
they ended up going to war with Brigham Young, you said, or something. Was there like a Battle of
Nauvoo?
What?
A lot of people.
What was the Battle of Nauvoo? I never heard of this one. Well, probably because anti-Mormons don't like it. I bet you it's probably something pro Brigham Young because we only hear about the battles that like anti-Mormons have canonized in their.
A couple days siege. They had some cannons. They fired into the city.
Cannons?
Yeah. The mob had cannons.
The mob had cannons?
Yeah.
Wait, we're talking like the Patriot, like they're putting in the forks and the knives, like grape shot and stuff, dude. For real?
They had cannons, and I don't have the exact details off the top of my head. I didn't know we were going to talk about it. I couldn't prepare, but yeah, they fired. Thomas Sharp led a brigade to seize Nauvoo. This is in summer of 45, fall of 45.
So what would have counted as the seizing of Nauvoo? Because like right now, for example,
we battled back and we got the government involved. Governor Ford sent some troops multiple times to try to establish peace. It was a powder keg there. And that's why you can't look at the movie Who Killed Joseph Smith in a 3-minute clip and determine
you're a man on a mission with this movie, aren't you? Yeah, I love it. So, you bring everything back to that. That's awesome.
Because there's so much going on before and after.
Uh-huh.
Thomas Sharp wrote in the paper after the martyrdom, Joseph Smith was going to get killed. Anybody, we regret that we're a law-abiding community. But we had to take matters into our own hands, and eventually it was going to have to happen. And, quote, anybody who is familiar with the circumstances would agree, unquote.
Wow.
They said right in the paper they killed Joseph. They never said we got up there and Joseph was dead.
So Thomas Sharp confessed to the murder of Joseph Smith via
the newspaper. Warsaw. Well, the community. Warsaw Signal. He was the editor of the newspaper.
Is there a copy of that still?
Yeah, I got the wording. Yes. You can go to the Warsaw Library website in Warsaw, Illinois, and they have scans of all these newspapers. And I think I brought you a copy of that one quote. And
that's intense.
I know. That's why I want to show it to you. So there's so much going on.
Okay, so then
hundreds of people, lots of tensions, lots of reasons, economic, political, habeas corpus, the court system. Religion played a part of it, but probably not as much as we thought it would. What the narrative that we hear, from our primary teachers.
Okay. So we just have to finish some thoughts here because you
wrap it up. I'm sorry.
No, we're not wrapping anything up. We got plenty of time to talk. But okay, so first off, this all got started because I mentioned as a child I read that book, The Fate of the Persecutors of the Prophet Joseph Smith.
Right.
Brigham Young supposedly cursed the persecutors or something, right? What was the deal? What was the premise of the book? Didn't Joseph Smith like prophesy
there's a couple things at play. Joseph Smith gave a prophecy of Warsaw, not on the people, but the economy of Warsaw, and that's very much come true.
Wait, I was talking about Brigham Young. I thought
Brigham Young. Let's avoid.
No,
that.
I'm saying no. Brigham Young. I'm not talking about the city of Warsaw. I'm saying didn't Brigham Young? Isn't the premise of the book the fate of the persecutors of the prophets Joseph Smith? Wasn't the premise of the book the fact that didn't Brigham Young place some kind of not hex? That's like witchcraft, but some kind of like
I know exactly what you're saying
on the people that had conspired against Joseph Smith, and wasn't the purpose of the book to try and show that hey, that came true?
I believe one of the purposes were, I forgot to talk about Mark Aldridge, who are also stood trial.
The only reason I say that
he died broke. He was first mayor of Tucson. If any of your viewers are from Tucson, have them ask their neighbors. Say, did you know our first mayor stood trial for the murder of the first U.S. presidential candidate ever assassinated? And they'll say, who's that? Say, look it up, and then I'll tell you more about it. Wait,
Joseph Smith was the first presidential candidate ever assassinated?
Yeah. Yeah.
Whoa, because now presidential candidates are actually protected by the Secret Service. So it's kind of interesting that you say that. Where was the Secret Service? Okay, so I'm just trying to go full circle here. So this whole little podcast started because I'd casually mentioned that old book, The Fate of the Persecutors of the Prophet Joseph Smith, which is supposedly based, the premise of the book is that Brigham Young cursed the persecutors of the prophet Joseph Smith, and the book was trying to document how these people died heinous lives, right? To me, if you get immediately deputized and shot in the face by Orrin Porter Rockwell, to me that's pretty much a fulfillment right there, right? I mean,
so to be clear, Orrin Porter Rockwell was deputized.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
Not the bad guy.
Sorry. If Orrin Porter Rockwell is deputized by a sheriff you're chasing, and then you get shot in the face by Orrin Porter Rockwell.
Well, he got shot. I'll tell you why. They say, Orrin, how did you get your guy and the guy next to you missed? He says, well, I always aim for the belt buckle. See, the guys were riding on horses and they were going up and down. The guy next to Orrin Porter Rockwell shot at the guy's head just as the horse, the movement went down and missed it. Orrin Porter Rockwell aimed for the belt buckle and got his guy and killed him. But you're right. Guy gets deputized, Worrell dies instantly. Well, within a few minutes, they put him on a cart and took him back.
That's like getting shot in the gut with a black powder rifle. I don't know if it was a black powder rifle, but that was the technology of the day. Okay.
Most likely.
Is like one of the worst deaths I can possibly imagine.
And there you go.
As your stomach acids spill into your abdominal cavity and just burn everything alive inside there. How is that not a total fulfillment of Brigham Young's prophecy?
I believe it was. Yeah.